I didn't believe in fate until the morning Maya Chen walked into Porter's coffee house and sat down at the table across from mine. It was October in Seattle. One of those rare autumn days when the rain held off and the sun filtered through the clouds in golden streams. I'd claimed my usual corner table at 7 in the morning. Laptop open, nursing my third Americano while pretending to work on the marketing presentation that was due by noon. In reality, I was staring at the same slide I'd been staring at for 40 minutes. My mind wandering to the same place it always wandered these days. The hollow feeling that had taken up residence in my chest since my breakup with Rachel 6 months ago. At 28, I thought I had my life figured out. I had a decent job at a tech startup, a nice apartment in Capitol Hill, a small circle of friends who tolerated my workaholic tendencies. I'd been with Rachel for 3 years, and we'd talked about marriage, kids, the whole timeline that seemed so clear and achievable. Until the night she told me she couldn't do this anymore, that somewhere along the way we'd become roommates instead of partners. That she loved me but wasn't in love with me anymore. The breakup had been civil, almost painfully so. No screaming, no throwing things, just a quiet unraveling of the life we'd built together. Rachel moved out within a week, taking half the furniture and all of the warmth from our apartment. I threw myself into work, told everyone I was fine, and spent my evenings meal prepping and reorganizing closets. Anything to avoid the silence. So there I was, staring blankly at Q3 marketing strategy slide 7. When the bell above the door chimed, I looked up reflexively. A habit I'd developed from too many hours spent people watching in this exact spot. She walked in like she owned the place, though there was nothing arrogant about it. She wore paint-splattered jeans, a vintage leather jacket over a white tank top, and carried a worn messenger bag that looked like it had traveled the world. Her black hair was cut short on the sides, longer on top, pushed back carelessly. She had the kind of face that made you look twice. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, eyes so dark they were almost black, and a small scar through her left eyebrow that gave her an edge of danger. But it wasn't her looks that stopped me. Mid-breath. It was the way she moved through space, present and unself-conscious in a way I'd forgotten people could be. She ordered a black coffee, exchanged what looked like genuine banter with Jeremy behind the counter, then scanned the room for a seat. Every table was taken except for the one directly across from mine. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. She gave me a small nod, a silent question. Mind if I sit here? I nodded back, then immediately looked down at my laptop. Heart inexplicably hammering. She settled into her chair with a satisfied sigh, pulled out a sketchbook and a battered paperback, and proceeded to completely ignore my existence. I tried to focus on my presentation, I really did, but I found myself sneaking glances at her over the top of my screen. She was sketching something, her hand moving in quick, confident strokes. Every few minutes, she'd pause to read a page of her book, then go back to drawing. She was so absorbed in what she was doing that she didn't notice when Jeremy brought her coffee. Didn't notice the group of loud college students who commandeered the table next to us. Didn't notice me watching her. I was being creepy. I knew I was being creepy, but I couldn't seem to stop after about 30 minutes. She put down her pencil and stretched, rolling her shoulders back. Then she looked directly at me and I realized I'd been caught staring. Sorry, I blurted out, feeling my cheeks flush. I was in tea. I was just procrastinating. She smiled and it transformed her entire face. Me too. Her voice was lower than I expected, with a slight rasp to it, like she'd just woken up. Marketing presentation, I said, gesturing helplessly at my laptop. Art show, she replied, tapping her sketchbook. I'm supposed to have 12 finished pieces by next Friday. I have 4. That's ambitious. That's what happens when you say yes to everything without checking your calendar. She took a sip of her coffee, made a face. Cold already. I get too focused and forget to drink things while they're hot. I can relate, I said, looking down at my own neglected Americano. I've been working on this one slide for an hour. What's the slide about? Social media engagement strategies for B2B tech companies. She grimaced sympathetically. Yeah, I'd procrastinate on that too. I laughed, surprised by the sound of it. I hadn't really laughed in weeks. I'm Maya, she said, extending her hand across the narrow space between our tables. Sarah, I replied. Reaching out to shake it, her hand was warm and strong, stained with what looked like charcoal and paint. The handshake lasted a beat longer than necessary, and when she pulled away, I felt the loss of contact more acutely than I should have. So, Sarah, Maya said, leaning back in her chair. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this presentation? 8, maybe 9. It's for a potential investor meeting. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to actually finish it in the next? She checked her phone. 2 hours if you keep sitting here staring at it. Honestly. 3. Here's what I think, Maya said, closing her sketchbook with a decisive snap. I think we're both stuck. I think we're both going to sit here pretending to work while actually spiraling into our own heads. Or," she paused dramatically, "we could do something completely different for 30 minutes, reset our brains and come back to this with fresh eyes. Something different like what? Have you ever been to the sculpture park? The Olympic sculpture park? Yeah, a few times. Have you ever really looked at the sculptures though? Like, sat with them, tried to figure out what the artist was thinking? I considered this? No. I guess I've always just kind of walked past them. Perfect. Come with me. 30 minutes. We'll look at some art, clear our heads, and then you can come back and knock out that presentation." Every reasonable part of my brain said this was a bad idea. I didn't know this woman. I had work to do. I wasn't the kind of person who just abandoned responsibilities to go look at sculptures with strangers, but maybe that was exactly the problem. "Okay," I heard myself say. 30 minutes. Maya's smile could have powered the entire city. We packed up our things and walked out into the Seattle morning. The sculpture park was only a few blocks away, downhill toward the waterfront. Maya walked fast, her long legs eating up the sidewalk, and I had to hurry to keep pace. "So, what kind of art do you make?" I asked, slightly breathless. "Mixed media mostly. Paintings, some sculpture, installation work. I steal from about a dozen different traditions and mash them together until something interesting happens." "Steal? Well, borrow extensively," she amended with a grin. "I studied art at RISD, spent a few years in Berlin, came back to Seattle about 8 months ago. I'm still figuring out what my work is here. You know, different city, different energy." "Why'd you come back?" Her expression shifted, something complicated passing across her face. "My mom got sick. She's okay now, mostly, but I realized I'd been running away from this place for a long time. Seemed like maybe it was time to stop running." We'd reached the park. It was quiet this early on a weekday, just a few joggers and a man walking 3 small dogs. The sculpture park stretched out before us, green grass and towering metal shapes against the backdrop of Puget, Sound, and the Olympic Mountains. Maya led me to a sculpture I'd passed 100 times without really seeing, a massive red steel structure that looked like a precarious stack of abstract forms. "Okay," she said, plopping down on the grass in front of it. "Sit." I sat, feeling slightly ridiculous. "Now look at it. Don't think about what you're supposed to see or what the plaque says it means. Just look at it and tell me what you feel." I looked. At first, all I saw was red metal, bold and industrial against the soft morning sky. But as I sat there, something shifted. The sculpture wasn't precarious at all. It was balanced, each piece necessary for the whole structure to work. It was about tension and trust, about how things that seem like they shouldn't fit together somehow do. It makes me feel... I paused, trying to find the words. Like everything's about to fall apart, but somehow, isn't like it's okay to be unbalanced? Because that's actually its own kind of balance. I turned to find Maya, staring at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Yes," she said softly. "Exactly that." We sat there for a moment in silence and I felt something shift inside me, like a door I didn't know was closed had suddenly opened. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "Sure." "That thing you said about everything being about to fall apart, but somehow isn't were? You talking about the sculpture or about yourself?" I should have been offended by the question. It was too intimate, too presumptuous from someone I'd known for less than an hour, but instead I found myself answering honestly. "Both. Maybe." Maya nodded like this made perfect sense. "I moved back to Seattle because my mom was sick, but that's not the whole truth. I also moved back because my girlfriend of 5 years told me she was getting married. To a man. Turns out she'd been seeing him for 8 months while we were together. Trying to figure out which life she wanted." "Jesus," I breathed. "Yeah. So I know a little something about feeling like you're about to fall apart." "My girlfriend left me 6 months ago," I heard myself say. "She said we'd become strangers living in the same apartment. And the worst part is, she was right." I was so focused on my career, on checking off all the boxes on some imaginary timeline, that I forgot to actually be present in my own life. "Are you still in love with her?" The question should have been impossible to answer, but somehow it wasn't. "No," I said, and realized it was true. "I think I'm mourning the future. I thought I was going to have more than I'm mourning her." "That's honest," Maya said. "Most people can't tell the difference." We stayed at the park for over an hour, moving from sculpture to sculpture. Maya told me about her art, about her time in Berlin, about the experimental installation she was working on for her show. I told her about my job, about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about how I'd always been the responsible one, the planner, the person everyone could count on to have her life together. "And, do you?" Maya asked. "Have your life together?" "From the outside, sure. But inside?" I shrugged. Inside, I feel like I'm going through the motions of someone else's life. So stop. What? Stop going through the motions. Start living like you mean it. It's not that simple, isn't it though? I wanted to argue with her to explain all the reasons why life was complicated and you couldn't just decide to be different. But sitting there in the morning sun, listening to the sound of the water, and watching the way the light caught in Maya's dark eyes, I couldn't quite remember what those reasons were. By the time we walked back to the coffee shop, it was almost 11. I'd missed the entire morning of work, and my presentation was still unfinished. I should have been panicking, but instead I felt calmer than I had in months. Thank you, I said as we stood outside Porter's. I needed that, so did I. Maya pulled out her phone. Can I get your number? I'd like to do this again sometime. My heart kicked into overdrive. Yes, definitely. We exchanged numbers and then Maya surprised me by pulling me into a quick hug. She smelled like coffee and paint and something citrusy I couldn't identify. Knock that presentation out of the park, she said, pulling back. And Sarah, that thing about living like you mean it, I wasn't just talking to you. I was talking to myself too. Then she walked away and I stood there watching her go. Feeling like something fundamental had shifted in my world, I went back to my apartment, opened my laptop and finished the presentation in 90 minutes. It was the best work I'd done in months. Part 2. The slow burn. Maya texted me that night. Maya, did you finish the presentation? Sarah, I did. Sent it off at 2:47. It's actually good. Maya, I knew it would be. I finished 2 paintings. Well, finished in the sense that I stopped messing with them, Sarah. That counts. Maya, what are you doing right now? I looked around my apartment. I was sitting on my couch in sweatpants, eating pad thai from the container and watching a home renovation show. I wasn't actually paying attention to too.Sarah, living my best life. You, Maya, liar. Come to my studio. I want to show you something, too.Sarah. Now. Maya, unless you have other plans with your pad thai. Sarah, how did you know about the pad thai? Maya, lucky guess. Send me your address. I'll pick you up in 20. I should have said no. It was almost 9 on a Tuesday night. I barely knew her. This was all moving too fast. Sarah. Okay. She showed up in an ancient Subaru that was more rust than paint. Blasting music I didn't recognize but immediately loved. She was wearing the same paint-splattered jeans from that morning but had swapped the leather jacket for an oversized flannel shirt. Your chariot awaits, she said. Grinning as I climbed in, her studio was in Georgetown. In a converted warehouse she shared with 4 other artists, she led me up 3 flights of stairs covered in graffiti and through a heavy metal door into a massive open space, divided by hanging curtains and makeshift walls. Maya's corner was controlled chaos. Canvases in various states of completion leaned against every available surface. The floor was covered in drop cloths, splattered with paint in every color imaginable. A massive work table held jars of brushes, tubes of paint, pieces of metal and wood, and found objects I couldn't begin to identify. The walls were covered in sketches, photographs, torn magazine pages, and what looked like fragments of poetry. But what stopped me in my tracks was the painting on the easel in the center of the space. It was huge, maybe 6 feet by 4 feet, and it was stunning. Abstract shapes in deep blues and purples and blacks swirled across the canvas, punctuated by sharp lines of gold and red. It felt like looking at a storm, at chaos contained within a frame, at destruction and creation happening simultaneously. This is what you finished today, I asked, moving closer. One of them. I need 12 pieces for the show, and they all need to feel like they're part of the same conversation without being too matchy-matchy, you know? It's incredible, Maya. She came to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her body. You think so? I've been staring at it for so long I can't tell anymore if it's any good. It's better than good. It's espa. I struggled to find the right words. It makes me feel something. Isn't that the whole point? What does it make you feel? I studied the painting, letting myself really look at it. Like there's beauty in the breaking. Like falling apart might be the beginning of something instead of the end. When I turned to look at her, Maya was staring at me with that same intense expression from the sculpture park. You see things, she said quietly. Most people look, but you actually see. So do you? Yeah, but it's my job. You're in tech marketing. You're not supposed to be this tuned in to art. Maybe I've been paying more attention since I met you. The air between us felt charged suddenly, heavy with something unspoken. Maya broke the moment by turning away, busying herself with cleaning a paintbrush that didn't look dirty, so she said, her voice deliberately casual. Tell me something about yourself that I wouldn't guess just from looking at you. Like what? Like, I don't know. What's your secret weird hobby? What did you want to be when you were a kid? What's the thing you're afraid of that doesn't make rational sense? I leaned against her work table thinking, when I was 8, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I was obsessed with the ocean, with whales specifically. I had this whole elaborate fantasy about living on a research vessel and studying humpback whale songs. That's adorable. What happened? Reality, I guess? Somewhere along the way, I figured out that marine biology wasn't a practical career. My parents were supportive but worried, you know? They were school teachers in a small town. They wanted me to have stability, security. So I studied business, got a sensible job, became a sensible person. Do you still love the ocean? I live in Seattle and I almost never go to the water, I admitted. How messed up is that? Pretty messed up. Maya put down the paintbrush and turned to face me fully. Okay, here's what we're doing this weekend. We're going to the San Juan Islands. We're going to get on a whale watching boat. And you're going to remember why 8-year-old you was so obsessed with whales. Maya, I can't. Just can't what? Take a weekend to do something you love. Sarah, when's the last time you did something just because it made you happy? I couldn't remember. That was the problem. I'll think about it, I said. I'll take that as a yes. She glanced at her phone. It's almost 11. I should probably get you home before you turn into a pumpkin. On the drive back to my apartment, we talked about everything and nothing. Maya told me about her favorite piece in the Seattle Art Museum, about her complicated relationship with her mom, about how she'd known she was gay since she was 12 and had her first kiss with another girl at church camp. I told her about my college girlfriend who'd broken my heart, about Rachel and the painfully civil end of our relationship, about how I felt like I was sleepwalking through my own life. When she pulled up in front of my building, neither of us moved to get out of the car. Can I ask you something? I said. Always. Why did you invite me to the sculpture park this morning? You didn't know anything about me. Maya was quiet for a moment. You know how sometimes you meet someone and you just know they're going to matter? Like, you can't explain it, but you can feel it in your bones. Yeah, I whispered. That's what I felt when I looked at you. She turned in her seat to face me fully. I looked at you and thought, this person is going to change my life. I don't know how yet, but I knew it was true. I felt it too. I admitted. It scared me. Does it still scare you? Terrifies me. Good, Maya said with a small smile. Anything worth doing should be at least a little terrifying. I got out of the car and walked to my door, then turned back. Maya had rolled down the window and was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. This weekend I called out, let's go see the whales. Her smile could have lit up the entire city. We left early Saturday morning, catching the ferry from Anacortes to Friday Harbor. Maya had borrowed a friend's car, something more reliable than her rust bucket, and brought a thermos of coffee and a bag of homemade muffins. You bake? I asked, surprised. I contain multitudes, she replied, grinning. The ferry ride was beautiful, the water calm and gray-blue under an overcast sky. We stood on the deck despite the chill, watching the islands slide past. And Maya pointed out eagles and seals and told me stories about spending summers here as a kid. My mom grew up on Orcas Island, she said. My grandparents had this little cabin right on the water. Some of my best memories are from those summers. We'd spend all day exploring the beaches, looking for glass floats and interesting rocks. Do your grandparents still have the cabin? No. They sold it years ago when they moved to Arizona. I've thought about trying to find it, but I don't know if I want to see it changed. You know, sometimes it's better to keep the memory perfect. I understood that impulse. There were places from my childhood I'd never gone back to. Afraid of finding them smaller or shabbier than I remembered, the whale watching tour was scheduled for 1 o'clock, which gave us time to explore Friday Harbor. We wandered through galleries and bookshops, had lunch at a tiny cafe overlooking the marina, and talked with the easy flow of people who'd known each other for years instead of days. Can I tell you something? Maya said as we walked along the waterfront. Promise you won't think I'm weird. I already think you're weird, but in a good way. Fair. She shoved her hands in her pockets, suddenly less confident. I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to meet you, and I know that sounds like a line. Like something someone says when they're trying to get into your pants, but I don't mean it like that. I mean, do you believe in soulmates? My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. I don't know. I never thought about it much. I always thought it was bullshit, Maya continued. Like, there are billions of people on the planet, right? The idea that there's only one person who's meant for you is statistically ridiculous. But then I met you, and I thought, oh, maybe it's not about there being only one person. Maybe it's about recognizing when someone fits in a way that no one else does. Maya, you don't have to say anything, she said quickly. I just wanted you to know. I wanted to be honest about what this is for me. And if it's not the same for you, that's okay. We can just be friends. I can handle that. I stopped walking, forcing her to stop too. What if it is the same for me? What if I'm terrified because I've known you for less than a week and you already matter more to me than people I've known for years? Then I guess we're both terrified together. We stood there on the waterfront looking at each other, and I had the strangest sensation of standing on the edge of a cliff. I could step back to safety, or I could jump and trust that something would catch me. I reached out and took her hand. Her fingers laced through mine like they'd been doing it forever. "Let's go see some whales," I said. The tour boat was small, holding maybe 20 people. We bundled up in the life jackets the crew provided and found a spot at the rail. The captain told us they'd had reports of a pod of orcas about an hour north. And off we went, cutting through the choppy water. I was practically vibrating with excitement. Maya laughed at my enthusiasm, but she was smiling the whole time, and her hand never left mine. It took about 90 minutes before someone spotted them. A call went up from the front of the boat, and everyone rushed to that side. And there they were, a pod of orcas, their distinctive black and white bodies breaking the surface of the water, their tall dorsal fins cutting through the waves. They were magnificent, powerful and graceful and utterly wild. I watched them surface and dive, watched the calf staying close to its mother, and felt something crack open inside my chest. I was crying. I hadn't even realized it until Maya gently wiped a tear from my cheek. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I forgot," I said, my voice thick. I forgot how much I loved this. How much I loved that feeling of being amazed by something, of wanting to understand how the world works. When did I stop caring about that? You didn't stop caring. You just forgot for a while. But you're remembering now. We watched the whales until they dove deep and didn't resurface. The captain told us they were probably hunting, and we turned back toward Friday Harbor. On the ride back, Maya and I sat close together, her arm around my shoulders, my head on her chest. Not talking, just being. Back on land, we were both buzzing with adrenaline and emotion. We'd planned to drive back that evening, but standing in the parking lot, neither of us wanted the day to end. "There's a little inn I used to stay at with my family," Maya said. "It's nothing fancy, but it's right on the water. We could stay tonight, head back tomorrow. I don't have any clothes or anything. They have a gift shop. We can buy you a Friday Harbor t-shirt and call it good." I should have said no. I should have been practical, responsible. But I was tired of being practical. I was tired of responsible. "Let's stay," I said. The inn was exactly as Maya described. Nothing fancy, but charming in a beach cabin kind of way. We got a room with 2 double beds and big windows looking out at the water. "I'm going to take a shower," I announced. Suddenly aware that I'd been in the same clothes all day and smelled like boat and ocean. "I'll run to the gift shop. Get us some supplies." When she came back 20 minutes later, I was out of the shower wrapped in a towel, my hair dripping. "I got you this," she said, holding up a t-shirt with a cartoon orca on it that said, "I'm a big deal in Friday Harbor." I laughed. "It's perfect." I also got us toothbrushes, wine, and those ridiculous souvenir sweatpants. We're living our best tourist lives. While Maya showered, I put on my ridiculous t-shirt and sweatpants, then sat on the bed by the window watching the sun set over the water. My phone had been blowing up all day with work emails I'd been ignoring. Normally, that would have sent me into an anxiety spiral, but tonight I felt free. Maya emerged from the bathroom in her own matching tourist outfit, her short hair still damp and sticking up in all directions. "We look absurd," she said. "Looking at our matching outfits, we look happy." She came to sit next to me on the bed, and we shared the bottle of wine, passing it back and forth. Watching the last light fade from the sky. "Can I tell you something else?" Maya said. "Something I've been too chicken to say. Yes, I want to kiss you. I've wanted to kiss you since the moment I saw you in that coffee shop. And I know we said we'd take this slow, figure out what this is, but I'm not good at slow. Sarah, I'm not good at pretending I don't feel what I feel." My heart was racing. I'm scared of how much I want this, of how fast this is happening, of messing it up. What if we don't mess it up though? What if this is exactly what it's supposed to be? I turned to look at her, this beautiful, intense, talented woman who had somehow walked into my life and turned everything upside down in the best possible way. "Kiss me," I whispered. She cupped my face in her hands, gentle and sure, and kissed me softly. Her lips were warm and tasted like wine and something sweet. The kiss was tender, questioning, asking permission with every touch. I answered by pulling her closer, deepening the kiss, tangling my fingers in her still damp hair. She made a small sound against my mouth, and something inside me ignited. We fell back on the bed, still kissing, hands exploring tentatively at first, and then with more confidence. Every touch felt electric, every kiss like coming home to something I'd been searching for without knowing it. "Wait," Maya said, pulling back slightly. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything. Because we can slow down. I don't want you to feel like I kissed her again, harder this time, trying to convey everything I was feeling without words." When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I don't want to slow down," I said. "For once in my life, I don't want to be careful. I want this. I want you." What happened next was tender and intense, and completely overwhelming in the best way. Maya took her time, learning my body like she learned art, with patience and attention and genuine curiosity. She made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced before. Like every touch was a discovery, every kiss a revelation. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the narrow bed, the window open to let in the cool ocean air, and I felt more present in my own body than I had in years. I started, then couldn't find the words. Yeah, Maya agreed, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. It really was. I've had sex before, obviously, but this was different. Is it always like this for you? She was quiet for a moment. No, this was different for me too. We lay there in comfortable silence, listening to the water lap against the shore, and I tried to memorize every detail. The weight of Maya's arm across my waist, the smell of her shampoo, the feeling of complete rightness that had settled over me. I'm falling in love with you, I said into the darkness. I know that's crazy. I know it's too soon. But I need you to know. Maya tightened her arm around me. It's not crazy, and it's not too soon. I'm falling in love with you too. Reality crashed back in on Monday morning. I'd called in sick to work, something I never did, and spent Sunday in a blissful bubble with Maya. We'd walked the beaches, eaten at small restaurants, made love again in the afternoon with sunlight streaming through the windows. It felt like being in a dream, like existing outside of normal time and space. But Monday meant going back to my apartment, back to my job, back to the life I'd been living before Maya Chen walked into Porter's coffee house, except now, that life felt like it belonged to someone else. You're glowing, my coworker Jessica said when I walked into the office. What happened to you this weekend? Nothing, I said automatically, then caught myself. Actually, I went to the San Juan Islands. Went whale watching you. Miss I can't take off went on a spontaneous weekend trip. I'm trying something new, I said. Trying to be less predictable? Well, it's working. You look happier than I've seen you in months. My boss Marcus caught me an hour later in the break room. Sarah, glad you're feeling better. I wanted to talk to you about the Henderson pitch. They loved your presentation and want to move forward. Congratulations. That's great, I said, and I meant it. But the excitement I should have felt was muted, distant. A few weeks ago, landing the Henderson account would have been the highlight of my month. Now it felt like just a thing that happened. You okay? Marcus asked, studying me. You seem distracted. I'm fine, just tired. That night, Maya came over to my apartment for the first time. I'd been nervous about it, worried she'd judge my carefully curated space with its neutral colors and minimalist furniture. But she'd walked in, looked around and said, "It's very you. Organized, elegant, a little bit sterile. We need to mess it up." Mess it up how? She'd pulled out a sketchbook and started drawing on my blank walls with chalk markers. Don't panic, it washes off. But you need some life in here, Sarah. Some color, some chaos, some evidence that an actual human lives here and not just a really efficient robot. I should have been annoyed. Instead, I found myself laughing as she covered my white walls with abstract designs and fragments of poetry and little drawings of whales. There, she said, stepping back to admire her work. Much better. She was right. The apartment did look better. It looked lived in, loved, imperfect in a beautiful way. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a pattern. We'd meet at Porter's in the mornings, work side by side in comfortable silence. We'd spend evenings at her studio or my apartment. We'd talked for hours about everything and nothing. I met her friends, other artists and musicians who accepted me into their circle with surprising ease. She met my friends who were shocked by this new version of Sarah, who showed up late and didn't apologize, who laughed louder and cared less about what people thought. I don't recognize you anymore, my friend Amanda said one night when we were out for drinks, and I mean that in a good way. You seem happy. Actually happy, not fake happy. I am happy, I admitted, happier than I've been in years. It's Maya, isn't it? You're in love with her. Yeah, I said, unable to keep the smile off my face. I really am. But loving Maya also meant dealing with the reality of who she was. Someone who lived for her art, who threw herself into projects with complete abandon, who sometimes forgot to eat or sleep when she was working. Her art show was in 3 weeks, and she was spiraling. I came to her studio one Wednesday evening to find her surrounded by half-finished canvases, paint in her hair, dark circles under her eyes. She'd been working for 16 hours straight. Maya, you need to take a break. I can't. I'm not done. None of this is working. She gestured wildly at the paintings around her. It's all garbage. I should cancel the whole show. It's not garbage. It's beautiful. You have to say that. You're sleeping with me. I say it because it's true. I walked over to her, took the paintbrush from her hand. When's the last time you ate? She had to think about it. Breakfast, maybe. It's 9 at night, Maya. I was working. I ordered Thai food, made her sit down and eat, then practically dragged her back to my apartment and into bed. She was asleep within minutes, curled against me, and I lay awake thinking about how much I loved her, how much she scared me. How different we were. I was the planner, the organizer, the person who color-coded her calendar and meal prepped on Sundays. Maya was chaos and passion and living entirely in the moment. We fit together in ways that surprised me, but I was starting to realize that loving someone didn't mean your differences disappeared. It meant learning to navigate them. The night of Maya's art show arrived faster than either of us was ready for. She'd finished all 12 pieces and they were stunning. I helped her hang them at the gallery, a converted warehouse in Pioneer Square, and watched her transform from my anxious girlfriend into a confident artist holding court with collectors and critics. The show was called Breaking Building, and it was all the things I'd felt that first day at the sculpture park: chaos and order, destruction and creation, falling apart and coming together. Every piece felt like a conversation between opposing forces, and somehow, in Maya's hands, they all found balance. I stood in front of the centerpiece, that first painting she'd shown me. The storm of blues and purples and black sand felt someone come up beside me. "You must be Sarah." I turned to find an older Korean woman with kind eyes and Maya's cheekbones. "Mrs. Chen, please, call me Susan. Maya's told me so much about you." "She has," Susan smiled. "She talks about you constantly. Sarah said this. Sarah thinks that. Sarah makes me want to be better. You're good for my daughter." I felt my cheeks warm. She's good for me too. She's changed my life. She has a gift for that. Maya feels everything so deeply, loves so completely. It can be overwhelming for people who aren't used to that intensity. "It is overwhelming," I admitted, "but in the best way." "Good." Susan squeezed my arm. "My daughter has been hurt before. I'd hate to see it happen again." It wasn't a threat exactly, but there was steel underneath the kindness. I met her eyes. "I'm not going to hurt her. I love her." "I believe you do. Just remember that love isn't always enough. You have to choose each other every day, even when it's hard." Before I could respond, Maya appeared, slightly breathless, her eyes bright with excitement. "Mom, stop interrogating my girlfriend. Sarah, I need you to meet someone. This collector from New York wants to buy 3 pieces and commission a 4th. She grabbed my hand and pulled me away, and I looked back to see Susan watching us with a knowing smile. The show was a success. By the end of the night, Maya had sold 8 pieces and had commissions for 4 more. She was riding high on adrenaline and champagne, laughing and talking with everyone. So alive and present that she seemed to glow. Back at my apartment later, she couldn't stop moving, couldn't stop talking. "Did you see their faces? They got it, Sarah. They actually understood what I was trying to say." "Of course they did. Your work is incredible." She pulled me into a kiss, deep and hungry, and we stumbled toward the bedroom, leaving a trail of clothes behind us. We made love with an intensity that left us both breathless, and afterward, Maya cried. "Hey," I said, alarmed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's the problem. I don't understand. I'm so happy it terrifies me. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for this to be too good to be true." I held her tighter. "What if it's not? What if this is just what we get to have? I don't know how to trust that." "Then we'll learn together, if I'm being honest." The cracks started to show about 3 months in. Maya got the commission from the New York collector, which was amazing, except it meant she was working constantly, disappearing into her art for days at a time. I'd text her and get one-word responses hours later. I'd stop by her studio and find her so deep in her work, she barely acknowledged my presence. I tried to be understanding. I knew her art was important, knew she had deadlines, but I also felt myself starting to slip back into old patterns. Throwing myself into work to avoid feeling neglected. "You're doing it again," Jessica said one day. Finding me at my desk at 8 at night, doing what? Hiding? Using work as an excuse not to deal with your feelings? "I'm not hiding. I'm finishing a project." "Sarah, you've been finishing projects every night this week. Where's Maya?" "Working on her commission, and you're here instead of with her because she's busy, Jess. Because I don't want to be that girlfriend who needs constant attention." There's a difference between needing constant attention and wanting to see your girlfriend more than once a week. She was right, and I knew it. But I didn't know how to bridge the gap that had opened between us, without seeming needy or cling. Why? The fight happened on a Friday night. I'd made dinner reservations at Maya's favorite restaurant, thinking it would be a nice surprise. But when I showed up at her studio at 7, she was still working, covered in paint, completely absorbed. "Maya, we need to leave in 15 minutes. "Leave for what?" "Dinner. I made reservations. I told you about this 3 days ago." She looked genuinely confused. "You did?" "Yes. I texted you. You said it sounded great." "I don't." "Sarah, I'm in the middle of something here. Can we reschedule?" Something inside me snapped. "No, we can't reschedule. I've been trying to see you all week, and you keep putting me off. I'm starting to feel like I'm dating a ghost. That's not fair. I told you I had this deadline, and I've been supportive. I've given you space. I haven't complained. I've tried to be understanding. But Maya, you can't just disappear into your work and expect me to wait around indefinitely. I'm not asking you to wait around. I'm asking you to understand that my art is important to me. I know it's important, but so am I at least. I thought I was. Maya put down her paintbrush, finally giving me her full attention. Of course you're important, Sarah. You're the most important person in my life. Then act like it. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your art. I'm asking you to make space for both. I don't know how to do that, she said quietly. When I'm working, I lose track of everything else. It's not personal, but it feels personal. It feels like I'm not a priority. We stood there, the silence stretching between us, and I felt the weight of all the things we weren't saying. Maybe this was a mistake. I heard myself say, "What? Us. Maybe we move too fast. Maybe we're too different. You don't mean that, don't I? Maya, we've been together for 3 months and it feels like we're already falling apart. We can't even get through one deadline without it becoming a crisis. So what are you saying? You want to break up, did I?" I looked at her, this beautiful, frustrating, passionate woman who had turned my world upside down, and I didn't know. I'm saying I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to love someone who's only half present. And I don't know how to be with someone who needs me to be available all the time. That's not what I need, isn't it though? Sarah, you're used to having everything planned and scheduled. But that's not how I work. I can't live my life on a calendar. And I can't live my life wondering when I'm going to see my girlfriend again. We were both crying now and I hated it. I hated that we were doing this, that we were hurting each other. That something that had felt so right 3 months ago, now felt so broken. I need some space, I said finally. I need to think. Space? Maya repeated flatly. Right? Because that's what you do when things get hard. You retreat. That's not fair, isn't it? The second things get complicated, you start looking for the exit, just like you did with Rachel. Don't bring Rachel into this. Why not? It's true, isn't it? You spent 3 years with her going through the motions, and the moment she called you on it, you let her go without a fight. Is that what you're doing with us? That's not. This is different, is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly the same. You say you want to be with me, but the second my life gets messy, the second I can't fit into your neat little boxes, you panic. My neat little boxes? At least I have some structure in my life. At least I don't just drift from one thing to the next without any thought for the people around me. The words hung in the air between us, ugly and impossible to take back. I think you should leave, Maya said quietly. Maya, please, just go. So I did. I walked out of her studio, out of the building, into the Seattle rain that had started to fall, and I drove home crying so hard I could barely see the road. I didn't hear from Maya for 4 days. I told myself I was respecting the space we both needed. I told myself I was being mature, giving us time to cool down before we tried to talk things through. But really, I was terrified. Terrified that I'd ruined everything, terrified that she was right about me, terrified that I was exactly the person Rachel had left. Someone who went through the motions but never fully committed. On the 5th day, I broke down and texted her, "Sarah, can we talk?" Hours passed with no response. I checked my phone obsessively, convinced she was ignoring me, convinced it was over. Finally, at midnight, my phone buzzed. "Maya, come to my studio tomorrow." 10 a.m., I barely slept that night. I rehearsed what I wanted to say 100 different ways, planned and replanned the conversation like it was a work presentation. By morning, I'd written and deleted a dozen speeches, and I still had no idea what I was actually going to say. When I got to her studio, Maya was waiting. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping much either. There was a new painting on her easel, something I'd never seen before. "Hi," I said, suddenly shy. "Hi, can I see it?" She nodded, and I walked over to look at the painting. It was different from her other works, smaller, more intimate. 2 figures rendered in abstract strokes of color, close together but not quite touching. The space between them filled with gold. "It's us," she said, "or it's supposed to be. I don't know if it's any good. I've been working on it for 4 days, trying to figure out what I wanted to say." "What do you want to say?" "That I'm sorry. That you were right. That I get so lost in my work sometimes that I forget there are people who need me to show up." "Maya, let me finish," she said. "I've been thinking about what you said about being half present. And you're right. When I'm working, I disappear. I always have. My ex used to complain about it too. And I told myself she just didn't understand artists. Didn't understand what it means to have a calling. But that's bullshit, isn't it? It's not about understanding. It's about me being too scared to let anyone in completely." I sat down on her paint-stained couch. "Why are you scared?" "Because people leave. My dad left when I was 6. My grandparents moved away. My ex cheated on me, then married someone else. Everyone I've ever loved has left Sarah. So I learned to protect myself by not being fully available. If I'm always a little distant, always a little distracted, Then it won't hurt as much when they go. But I'm not going anywhere, aren't you? Her voice was gentle but firm. Sarah, you asked for space? You suggested maybe we were a mistake. That sounds like someone looking for the door. She was right. I had been looking for the door, unconsciously preparing for the inevitable end, because that was easier than risking everything on something that might not work out. I'm scared too, I admitted. You were right about Rachel. I did let her go without a fight because part of me was relieved. It was easier than admitting that I'd stopped being present in that relationship years ago. And then I met you, and suddenly I was feeling everything so intensely it terrified me. You make me want to be brave, but I don't know if I know how. Maya came to sit beside me. So what do we do? I think we have to decide if this is worth fighting for, because it's going to be a fight. Maya, we're different people with different needs and different ways of being in the world. It's not going to be easy. I don't want easy, she said. I want you, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I want you to, but we have to figure out how to make this work. We need to communicate better, set boundaries, check in with each other. That sounds very practical and organized. Well, one of us has to be. She smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from her in days. Okay, so let's make a plan. Tell me what you need from me. We spent the next 2 hours really talking, not fighting or defending or shutting down. We talked about expectations and fears and what we each needed from the relationship. We agreed that Maya would set aside 2 evenings a week that were just for us, no work allowed. I agreed to be more flexible about last-minute changes and to actually tell her when. I was feeling neglected instead of retreating into work. We made a shared calendar, which Maya mocked but agreed to check daily. This feels very adult, she said, looking at the color-coded schedule on her phone. Welcome to my world. Can we make Wednesday nights adventure night where we do something spontaneous? How do you plan for spontaneity? You plan to be spontaneous? Come on, Sarah, work with me here. I laughed. Fine. Adventure Wednesdays it is. She pulled me into a hug, and I breathed in the familiar smell of her paint and coffee and that citrusy something I'd never identified. I missed you, she whispered against my hair. I missed you too. I'm going to mess this up again, you know? I'm going to get absorbed in a project and forget to text you back. I'm going to be late for things. I'm going to drive you crazy. I know. And I'm going to overthink things and make too many plans and need more reassurance than is probably reasonable. I'm going to drive you crazy too. So we'll drive each other crazy together. Sounds perfect. The next 6 months weren't easy, but they were worth it. We fought. We disagreed. We had to negotiate and compromise and sometimes walk away from conversations too cool. Down before we said things we couldn't take back, but we also showed up for each other in ways that mattered. Maya came to my company's annual gala, even though she hated fancy events and spent the whole evening fidgeting in her dress. I spent 3 days helping her install a piece for a group show, even though I had no idea what I was doing and mostly just handed her tools. She learned to check the shared calendar. I learned to be okay with canceled plans when her creative inspiration struck. We met each other's families. My parents came to visit, and I watched my practical, conservative mother fall completely in love with Maya's chaotic energy. Maya's mom had me over for traditional Korean dinner and told me stories about Maya as a child. Always drawing, always creating. Driving her teachers crazy with her inability to sit still. She's found something with you. Susan told me as we washed dishes while Maya was out picking up dessert. A steadiness. You ground her. She gives me wings, I replied. I was so stuck before I met her. I didn't even realize how small my life had become. You're good for each other. Just don't forget that relationships take work, even when you love each other. Especially when you love each other, I agreed. My career was going well. I got promoted to senior marketing manager, which meant more responsibility and better pay, but also longer hours. Maya's art was taking off too. She had shows in Portland and San Francisco, and a gallery in Los Angeles wanted to represent her. We were both busy, both pursuing our ambitions, and somehow we made it work. Adventure Wednesdays became sacred. Some weeks we drove out to the coast and watched the sunset. Other weeks we took a cooking class or went to an underground music show or just wandered around the city looking for interesting street art. The point wasn't what we did. It was that we did it together, present and engaged with each other and the world around us. On our 1-year anniversary, Maya took me back to the San Juan Islands. We stayed at the same inn, in the same room, and went whale watching again. This time we saw a huge pod of orcas, maybe 30 or 40, hunting and playing and being magnificently themselves. I have something for you, Maya said, when we got back to the room. She pulled out a small wrapped package. Inside was a painting, maybe 8 inches by 10 inches. It was the view from this room, the water, the sky, a pair of orcas breaching in the distance. But it was also abstract, dreamlike, more feeling than realism. It's us, she said. The day I knew I was going to love you for the rest of my life, my eyes filled with tears. Maya, it's perfect. There's something else. She took a deep breath, suddenly nervous. I found a house. Well, it's more like a converted boathouse, right on the water in Ballard. It has a huge open space that would make a perfect shared studio room for both of us to work. And I was thinking, maybe we could get it together. Want to move in together? I know it's a big step. And I know we agreed to take things slow. But Sarah, I can't imagine my life without you in it. I don't want slow anymore. I want everything with you. I kissed her hard, trying to pour everything I felt into it. Yes. Let's get the house. Yeah. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want the studio and the adventure Wednesdays and the fights about the shared calendar. I want all of it. She pulled me close, and we stood there by the window, holding each other as the sun set over the water. And I thought about how different my life was from a year ago, how I'd been so certain I knew what I wanted, so convinced I had everything figured out. Maya had blown all of that apart in the best possible way. She'd taught me to be present, to take risks, to stop planning every moment and just live. And I'd given her something too: stability, reliability. Someone who showed up even when things got hard. We were still learning how to love each other. We still messed up, still had to apologize, still had moments where we couldn't understand each other's perspective. But we were learning together, choosing each other every day, and that made all the difference. The house was perfect. Imperfect, really, in the way that mattered most. The floors were uneven, the plumbing occasionally made concerning noises, and there was a persistent draft from somewhere we could never quite locate. But it had huge windows overlooking the water, exposed wooden beams, and enough space for both of us to work side by side. We moved in on a rainy Saturday in March, with help from our friends. Maya's artist crew showed up with a truck and questionable packing skills. My work friends brought label makers and organizational systems. By the end of the day, our two lives were officially merged. My orderly boxes stacked next to Maya's chaotic bins of art supplies. My minimalist furniture mixing with her thrift store finds. My books alphabetized by author, next to her books organized by spine color, because it looks better that way. This is never going to work, I said, looking at the beautiful disaster of our living room. It's going to be perfect, Maya countered, pulling me into a kiss. She was right, of course. It was perfect in its own messy, imperfect way. I started working from home 2 days a week, setting up a small office in the corner of our shared studio. At first, I worried I'd distract Maya or she'd distract me, but we fell into a rhythm. She'd paint while I worked on campaigns. She'd blast music while sketching, and I'd put in headphones. Sometimes we'd take breaks together, walking down to the water or making lunch side by side in our tiny kitchen. This is nice, I said one afternoon, 6 months after moving in. We were both taking a rare break, sitting on our back deck with coffee, watching sailboats drift by. What is this US doing our own things in the same space? I used to think love meant being joined at the hip, doing everything together. But this is better. Yeah, we're together, but we're still ourselves. We support each other without losing ourselves. Does that make sense? Maya reached over and took my hand. Perfect sense. My career continued to thrive. I got headhunted by a bigger company offering a VP position and a significant raise. It would mean more travel, longer hours, but also more creative freedom and a bigger platform. Take it, Maya said when I told her about the offer. But it means I'll be gone more. Late nights, business trips. Sarah, when have I ever asked you to be less than you are? This is your dream job. Take it. It doesn't bother you. Of course it bothers me. I'll miss you when you're gone. But I'm also incredibly proud of you. And we'll make it work, just like we make everything else work. So I took the job. And yes, it was hard sometimes. There were weeks when I was traveling 3 days out of 5. There were times when Maya's shows coincided with my big projects and we were both stressed and short. But we kept showing up for each other. We FaceTimed from hotel rooms and airports. We celebrated each other's wins and supported each other through the losses 2 years after we moved into the boathouse. Maya had her first solo show in New York. It was a huge prestigious gallery. Reviews in major publications, collectors flying in from around the world. I took a week off work to be there with her, and watching her stand in that gallery, confident and radiant, explaining her work to critics and collectors, I felt overwhelming pride. You did it, I said at the after party, pulling her aside for a moment. You actually did it. We did it, she corrected. Sarah, I couldn't have done any of this without you. You believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. That's what we do. We believe in each other. Later that night, back at our hotel room, Maya pulled a small box from her bag. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a ring. Not a diamond, but a hammered silver band with a small stone I didn't recognize set into it. It's sea glass, Maya said. From the beach where we saw the whales on our first trip to the islands, I had a jeweler set it. She took a shaky breath. Sarah Mitchell, will you marry me? I was crying before I could even answer. Yes, God, yes. She slipped the ring on my finger and we held each other, both crying, both laughing, both overwhelmed with the weight and joy of this moment. I love you, I said against her neck. I love you so much. I love you too. Even when you're color-coding our shared calendar? Especially then. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the sculpture park, where we'd spent our first morning together. The same red sculpture we'd sat in front of, talking about balance and falling apart and holding together. My parents were there, already treating Maya like the daughter they'd always wanted. Susan was there, crying happy tears and telling anyone who would listen about how she knew I was the one from the moment she met me. Our friends filled the space with love and laughter and ridiculous toasts. When it was time for our vows, I looked at Maya, my wife. I could call her that, Noanne said. 3 years ago. You sat across from me in a coffee shop and changed my life. You taught me to be present, to take risks, to stop planning every moment and just live. You taught me that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I promise to keep showing up. I promise to support your dreams while chasing my own. I promise to make time for adventure Wednesdays and spontaneous trips and looking at art until we understand what the artist was trying to say. I promise to love you, all of you, for the rest of my life. Maya's vows were characteristically less structured. Sarah, you're the most organized person I've ever met. And somehow you chose to love me, the least organized person on earth. You could have picked someone easier, someone who fit into your plans, someone who didn't cover your walls with chalk markers or forget to check the shared calendar. But you picked me, and I promise to be worth that choice. I promise to keep learning how to balance my art with our life together. I promise to remember that love is a choice we make every day, not just a feeling we have. I promise to believe in us, even when it's scary, even when we mess up. I promise to keep choosing you every single day for the rest of our lives. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. I'm sitting at Porter's Coffee House, the place where this all began. It's early morning, the same time I was here that day 5 years ago when Maya walked in and sat down across from me. My laptop is open, but I'm not working. I'm writing this story instead, trying to capture what it's been like. This journey we've been on. We've been married for 3 years now. Our life isn't perfect. No life is. We still fight sometimes. Maya still gets absorbed in her work and forgets to text me back. I still overthink things and make too many plans. We still have to choose each other consciously, especially during the hard times, but we're happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way I never knew was possible. Maya's career has taken off beyond either of our wildest dreams. She's represented by galleries in 5 cities now, and her pieces sell for more than we ever imagined. She's working on a public installation for the city, a massive piece that will live in front of the new light rail station. My career is thriving too. I'm VP of Marketing now, leading a team of 12, working on campaigns that actually excite me. I've learned to balance ambition with presence, to work hard without losing myself in the work. We're talking about kids. It's a new conversation for us, one we're approaching carefully, but we both want it. We want to raise children who know how to be present, how to take risks, how to balance structure with spontaneity. Last weekend, we went back to the San Juan Islands. We've been going every year on our anniversary, a tradition we both love. We saw the whales again, orcas breaching and playing. And I thought about 8-year-old me who wanted to be a marine biologist. That dream didn't die. It just transformed into something else. Into this life I'm living, where I make room for wonder and curiosity and the things that make me feel alive. The bell above the door chimes, and Maya walks in. She's supposed to be at her studio, but she tracked me here because she knows me. Knows that sometimes I need this place, these memories, this full circle moment. Hey you, she says, sliding into the seat across from me. The same seat she took 5 years ago. Hey yourself. Writing? I'm telling our story. How does it end? I look at her, this woman who walked into my life and turned everything upside down, who taught me how to live instead of just existing, who challenges me and supports me and loves me even when I'm difficult. It doesn't end, I say. It just keeps going. We keep choosing each other, keep growing together, keep figuring it out as we go. That's a good ending. It's not an ending at all. It's a beginning that keeps beginning. Maya smiles, reaching across the table to take my hand. I like that better. And sitting here, in this coffee shop where it all started, holding hands with my wife, I realize that this is what I was searching for all along. Not perfection, not a life that looks good on paper, but this. Presence, partnership, love that asks you to be brave and rewards you for trying. She sat across from me 5 years ago and my life was never the same. Thank God for that.